Well, I think when you add the word God to justice, it changes a whole bunch of things. One of them is, the fundamental thing is that it's not just the agreed upon qualities of justice that society or cultures agree on, but that justice finds its root in God's self. But this means that God's justice has to do with God's covenant with humankind and God's intention for creation. So it's the big picture. Why is creation there, and what is right in creation? What is the right of God? What is it created for? How does it function? What is it intended to be? So God's justice has to do with the of creation coming into its own for the purpose for which it was created.
When I think of God's justice, I think of the way in which God regards the world in a very different way from how we regard it, and regards the earth's people in a different way from we regard it. Human beings are obsessed with rights and wrongs, and that's why in every country we have huge legislatures who churn out new laws week by week. But God's justice is about something more than rule keeping. It's about allowing the potential in every person to be vindicated. And it's also about safeguarding the potential which is in the earth, because God in Christ comes not just to save human beings, but comes to save the earth. So for me, the justice of God is the means by which potential is released, and the means by which potential is prevented from being diminished or damaged.
When I ponder what God means by stating God's justice, I picture the system in which He created the world to work. So I picture us living within a structure, and it gives me great comfort and peace to know that God has got a structure in place, and that He's actually the judge. So judgment doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to other people. He's got a system that He put in place from the very beginning, that He holds people to account by, and that it's His rule, it's His law, and it's His world. And that's kind of neat working within that, because it really frees me just to do what I've been asked to do, and to act as His agent in love, in action, and that kind of thing. But pondering how come justice works this way, or why did this happen to somebody and not this, and how do I interact with this person who's on my doorstep, who's crying because they can't feed their kids, and yet can't make the decision about whether to hold down 3 jobs or be at home with their kids. I have to deal with the practical of that. But lately there's just been really great freedom in the fact of, as I wrestle with the big question of why, for me there's comfort in knowing that I don't have to have all the answers in that at the end of the day, God gets to be the one it's His system, His court, and He'll be the one who makes it right in the end.
God is pretty clear about how the widow, how the orphan, how the poor are to be treated, how the marginalized and the excluded are to be treated. And when they are excluded, whether we read that in Deuteronomy or in the Gospels, God is not pleased. And so there's much there that, as I said, that can guide us and inspire us in how we are to live in this world. Jesus healed all people and accepted all people. He didn't pick and choose. And He would often accept those who society had cast aside. And that tells us something.
God calls creation into being with a purpose, and then makes a covenant with humankind that is focused on what creation is meant to be. And creation is meant to be in harmony with God and with one another. So a unity and a connectedness that includes both the diversity of creation and a union and a harmony with God. So that's the heart of it. And in this context, the whole of creation is involved in justice. It's not just people. So humans are called in the first place in Genesis 2 to tend the garden. So there's a responsibility to creation, to ecology, for the caring of God's world. That is the beginning of ideas of justice. So that which is placed in the hands of human beings becomes in the hands of God in terms of God's justice. And when we treat creation and one another, we treat one another and creation as if God is treating one another and creation.
The way in which the resources of the earth are managed and shared is something for which God has a primary concern. And where humanity fails to appreciate the beauty, not just the beauty, but the fruitfulness, the richness of the earth, and perverts its use for limited human purposes, particularly only for the Western people rather than the whole globe, then I believe that that's high in God's agenda. God enters into a covenant, not just with Noah. The covenant is with the whole earth. That's why the bow is in the sky, so that even the grass can see that God has a relationship with the earth. And humanity is expected, as the custodians of God's earth, to respect boundaries, to enable, in a world in which we have enough food to feed everyone, to ensure that distribution channels enable that to get out. And where we abuse the earth, where we tame it, or rather exploit it for our own purposes, where we give, as it seems we're giving, to our children's children the legacy of polluted seas and deforested lands and soil that's barren because it has been over-fertilized. This also is something which is crucial to our understanding of God's justice.